Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to cruise a little smarter. I'm your host, Lake, and I'm joined by my co-host, Christy. Christy, how are you today?
I am well, Lake. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Crazy day, crazy week, I think, as everyone in our chat here has agreed.
I mean, my week was kind of easy, but I have a whole crazy month ahead of me, so I'm going to take my easy week where I can.
It was a good day, though. Just very busy.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was busy. I've been busy this week, but I've just been able to just have a regular good work week. It's been kind of nice, and I feel like I don't have very many normal work weeks until August from this point forward. So I'm going to take my good weeks when I can. I mean, it's all my own doing, but...
Too many cruises and trips.
I have a lot happening in the next 3 months, so...
Well, speaking of cruises, let's jump into it and welcome back our guest, one of our beloved Patreon members as well. Welcome back to the show, Dennis. How are you today?
I am doing well. I've had a very long week myself, but I am extremely pleased to be ending it by talking about this cruise I did back in March.
I love it. Let's get into it. What sailing did you book and who sailed with you?
So we did a 4-night cruise out of San Diego on the Wonder, and I sailed with my wife, Beth, my 2 sons, one of which is also named Dennis, but we call him DJ for clarity's sake, and then Alec, and they were 21 and 18, respectively, at the time.
That's great.
I love it. And what made you want to book this Wonder sailing out of San Diego?
So here's the thing. I had a couple cruises booked last year that I was not able to take because my air conditioning in the house went out, and the combined price of fixing that was more than the 2 cruises I had booked. And I'm on the verge of being an empty nester. So DJ's about ready to graduate from college. Alec is getting ready to go to college. And so I don't know when I'm going to be able to book a vacation for the 4 of us again. And so at one point last year, I told my wife, I don't care what we're sacrificing this year, but we're going to make this happen. We're going to do something so the 4 of us can have at least one last hurrah before we don't know where everybody's going to be and don't know when we're going to be able to do this again. So I put together a couple of different options for everybody. I came up with a budget, and there was a cruise out of Galveston on the Magic. There was this cruise out of San Diego on the Wonder, and I can't remember what the other one was. And then I put it up to a vote, fully expecting the Magic out of Galveston to win because it was the longest cruise. They all decided that they wanted to go. I got outvoted 3-1. They decided they wanted to go back on the Wonder out of San Diego. So that is, in fact, what we decided to do.
Well, I'm not sad that they made that decision because I'm very excited to talk about the Wonder today. I mean, the Magic would have been great too, but it's been a minute since we've talked about the Wonder, so this will be good.
Yeah, we couldn't go wrong. I was not disappointed with the result because, I came up with the list. So, these are all things that I chose. But regardless, it was fun when we got around to planning it, and I got to see everybody's enthusiasm. And so this was the first cruise that we've done where everybody was over the age of 18, which opened up every area on the ship to us and made this a far different sailing than anything we've done before. This was our 9th cruise for everybody but DJ. He missed this same itinerary we did 3 years ago. We had to cancel a cruise so that he could take a summer course. And so Beth and Alec and I took this itinerary just because we needed a vacation. And but it was different this time. And I don't want to say it was necessarily better, but it was a really, really good cruise. And I'm excited to share the details.
So you said you did some planning ahead of the cruise. What did you plan?
So it's hard just to go to San Diego and get on a ship. You need to do things while you're there. Unfortunately, things came up that prevented us from getting there too far in advance. So the day that we got into San Diego, we got there in the afternoon. We didn't have a whole lot to do. But then post-cruise, we were planning we decided to stay the day in San Diego because it was going to be a race to the airport, getting off the ship that morning, and or it was going to be spending like 5 or 6 hours waiting for a flight. And so we ended up staying in that Wyndham Bayside Hotel that's right across the street from the cruise port. We went down to the Midway Museum. We went to Little Italy and got some food. The other thing that happened, and I'm getting ahead of things, is that I could not get a reservation at Palo. which was for the four of us. I could get two, but I could not get four. And so the night before, there was a restaurant practically right next to the port called Brantin. And I don't want to say it's a Apollo experience, but it is a bit more of an pricier experience. You're not necessarily fine dining, but elevated dining, I suppose. And so we did make a reservation, but we showed up there, had a fantastic menu, some of the best scallops I've ever had, crab and lobster fondue and the like. But that was it. It was just a matter of being there and enjoying San Diego for an evening. What I didn't know is that there was an electronic music festival right next door to our hotel. And
No.
well, we were checking in, and the clerk made a lot of assurances that they were going to be done at 10. She promised they would be done at 10, and they were done at 10. But that hotel was full of 20-somethings in their rave gear, and we stood out like sore thumbs. And but it was fun, because we just wandered around San Diego for a while, and we saw all these flocks of people heading to the concert, and there was no doubt where they were going. It was an interesting evening, to say the least.
Did you ever try to get Paulo on the ship? I'm jumping ahead, but I just need to know.
I would have, except when I brought that up at dinner, my boys informed me that they didn't bring the appropriate attire. So I abandoned that plan the night before the cruise.
Well, why don't we go ahead and jump into it? We've already talked about San Diego. For the pre-night, did you also stay right across from the port?
Yes, and I highly, highly recommend that. That Wyndham Bayside Hotel, that it is directly across the street from the port. And we did that again 3 years ago. Here's the one thing I'm going to recommend. If you have flexibility and when you can take that cruise, go after daylight savings time. Because if you're an early riser like me, you can wake up in the morning at about 6 and watch the Wonder sail in. This time, since it was pre-daylight savings time, so I was looking for it, but it was dark. I could not see the ship. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what the noise was. I looked out the window, and there it was. The Wonder was practically docked at that point. So, okay, I mean, not the biggest deal, but this was the first cruise I've done on the Wonder out of 4 times that I was not able to watch that ship sail into port. And I've been in Stanley Park in Vancouver for an Alaska cruise twice, and I've chased it back from the park to the port, and always really, really enjoyed that. The Wonder is like one of the easiest ships you can do that with because of where it sails from. So again, if you're interested in doing that, get a post-daytime cruise.
Never thought about that.
Well, let's jump into it. You walk right across the street to get to the port there. How was your embarkation process?
Really, really smooth. We had a 11:30 port arrival time, and we left our rooms at 11 o'clock after I basically spent the morning just sitting on my balcony listening to the chimes because they were telling the different tags where you could get off the ship. And my wife and I were packing up a bag, and we heard the first one. We both stopped what we were doing, just dropped everything, and we went out into the balcony and started watching people get off the ship. And then at 11, we went down to check out, thinking it was going to take longer because we had a really long line to check into the hotel the night before. And then the next thing we know, we were across the street at 11:10, and someone asked to see our port arrival form, and we showed it. She's like, "Oh, go ahead." And so we got through the check-in process before our official port arrival time on this. And then we were boarding group 3 or 4, one of the really, really early ones. And we were on the ship before noon, and it could not have gone smoother. It's not a fancy a port as you're going to find in Port Canaveral. I have not yet sailed out of Fort Lauderdale, so I couldn't compare it to that. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, we just didn't spend any time there. We sat down and we connected to the ship's Wi-Fi and started looking at the schedule. And the next thing you know, they were calling our boarding group, and we were on the ship.
Yeah, it's not a built-up port. It's a little warehouse that you go through. But the beauty of you can just walk into that port. When Dennis says his hotel was across the street, it is literally across the street. There's no MacGyvering around like port security or anything. You basically just walk right in. Katie and I walked from the train station one time when we sailed out of there.
Yeah, it makes sense. Because it's so convenient. It's the most convenient port that I've sailed out of so far.
It is your 4th time boarding the Wonder. What was it like getting back on her?
It was great. The last cruise we did was in 2024 when we did the Mediterranean and on the Dream. And like I said, we just had other expenses that prevented us from taking trips last year. And this is the ship that I've sailed on the most. And just walking in, and there was that comfort of the familiarity of being there. And, while it's fun to be on a new ship and to get to explore a little bit, it was also just a great comfort knowing, okay, we know exactly where to go. This time around, we decide to do Cabanas for lunch. We normally do sit down dining, but since it was only a 4-day cruise, we didn't want to lose 2 hours eating lunch. And so we wandered up there, had a quick lunch. The last time I did Cabanas for lunch on embarkation day was my very first cruise back in 2017. And so I felt like a complete rookie during this process. And I went to get the crab claws and couldn't find what you needed to crush the shells on those. And I completely wrecked a fork trying to eat my lunch with a crab, but got through that and then was on to just wander around the ship for the rest of the afternoon until we got to the sail away, or to the muster drill and the sail away party.
What kind of cabin did you book for this cruise?
We booked 2 verandas and we were on deck 6 in the aft. What was fun about this is that since DJ was 21, I didn't have to put my wife in one of the cabins and myself in the other one. So I could just put both the boys in a stateroom and not worry about who had what key card, because they had their cards to their own room. And they were also not connecting rooms. They were right next to each other. But what we did open the little wall between our 2 balconies, and that's how we would get back and forth between the 2 rooms when we needed to. But we had the veranda staterooms. They had their own room. And it was nice because on every other, since they've become teenagers, these last couple cruises, we've always gotten 2 verandas. They're just, that upper bunk is not comfortable for either one of them. But then, we always had to coordinate who was going where in order to get into the rooms, because sometimes you'd come back and you'd have that connecting door would be closed. And so whoever needed to be in the room couldn't necessarily get there. So that worked out this time. The only downside to that was that we booked the photo package in advance. And I booked it under my name on my room, which I did not discover until at the end of the cruise. I could not get the pictures of just my boys.
But I think you could have. Okay, because you're a nuclear family. You can go and they can tag your cabin. Like, you can't do it with all your brothers and sisters. But this is, you're the parents. These are your 2 children. You could get their pictures.
Right. You just have to make that accommodation is the thing. And so I didn't realize that, because I don't know exactly what the situation was, but I've never had a problem doing that. But this time it did present that challenge when I was trying to download the pictures at the end. And I did find out after the fact that I could have gone and talked to them. So it's not the end of the world, because I have a ton of great pictures of the 4 of us. And now a whole lot of pictures of my wife and I, but would have liked to have had the pictures of the boys as well.
Let's just stick with the photo package for a minute instead of coming back around to it. But did you find that you got good value out of the package for you guys?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I get it every single one of our cruises. We make sure that we do plenty of poses at dinner. Usually most nights between the show and the theater and dinner, we go do at least one of the backdrops. Like on Pirate Night, we had a lot of fun, goofy photos that we did with that. We have a tradition that we may not go meet a lot of characters, but it is not a family vacation unless we get a picture with Donald Duck. And so we went and met Donald and got pictures there. And we don't go get pictures anymore. And so, yeah, you can give someone your phone and stuff like that, but I always feel like they turn out better when they're using their cameras and you get the pictures out of the package.
Oh, that's great.
Well, let's keep going with embarkation. You had mentioned going up to see the sail away party.
Yeah, we did. We had stopped by the spa right before that so my wife could sign up for Manny and Petty. This was the most efficient embarkation day I ever had. And I think Cabanas made the difference, because as much as I enjoy that sit down lunch, it really does take up a lot of time. But we got through Cabanas, we stopped by the spa. She signed up for a couple extra appointments. And then we killed time outside of the Cove Cafe. And again, we were able to do that because everyone was able over the age of 18 for a change. And that became one of our favorite spots on the ship over the course of the cruise, because as much as we love funnel vision, it was just so much quieter there outside the Cove. And so I went and grabbed a Di-Serrano sour from Signals, which is right next to the Cove Cafe. My wife and son got coffee, and I can't remember what Alec got, but it doesn't matter. And we sat there until it was time for the sail away party. And then we wandered up there. We got a spot on deck 10, watched that. And, there's a lot of variety in the sail away for the different ports. And San Diego is just kind of fun because you're essentially in this big military area, and there was 3 aircraft carriers in port, and then you sail by a base, and so there was helicopters and jets and things sitting out there. So there's a lot to see. And so anyway, if you're going to do San Diego, I recommend not rushing off after that sailaway party stop, so you can just kind of take in the views of downtown and everything else there is to see as you sail out of San Diego.
It is a super cool sail away. You do the sail away. What does your family get up to next?
So we love the French Quarter Lounge, and I think we spent a significant amount of time there over the course of the cruise. And I know we spent some time there. The key act that we usually saw in there was called the Starlight Serenade. It was a husband-wife team that would sing and play the piano, and they did a lot of Disney hits. And if they didn't know your song, they would learn it for later in the cruise, and they did. I heard lots of people giving them requests, and they would go look it up if they could. There was a couple that they would always say, it's like, if you're going to request like songs from the movie Wish, they were having a hard time finding. So they'd always put that disclaimer up front, but they were a delight. We got to talk to them a couple times. We love strolling deck 4. And so, especially at sunset and in the evenings, that's a great way to spend your time. I don't believe there was anything in the theater that night. So for us, it was just kind of settling in. The funniest thing that happened that evening is that Alec likes to get the popcorn bucket. And so we went to deck 5 outside the theater to do so. And when we got there, there was 2 kids talking to the attendant, and they were trying to use a gift card to get the popcorn bucket, and it wouldn't work. And as we were getting there, I'm trying to make this long story short, the attendant was like, okay, you guys need to go down to guest relations on deck 3 and get this taken care of. And so they headed off. He's like, oh, wait, your card. And so he was holding it out, and it's like, you want me to give this to him? And he said, yes. So I took it and handed it to the kids, only for him to realize that was his staff ID. And so, he didn't realize it until we were trying to buy the bucket, and he didn't have anything to turn on his terminal. So for about 10 minutes, I was guarding the popcorn stand while he chased after the kids down to guest services. So anyways, he got back. He was very grateful, gave us some free drinks, and sold us the popcorn bucket at a discount so that he could get that taken care of. But, it's just the course of a cruise at times. And then after that, it was Tiana's for dinner, which is, I think, if not my favorite restaurant in the fleet, it's among the favorites that I have. It's the environment, I think I had shrimp and grits that night, the Cajun sea bass. That was all it's a fantastic time anytime you're down in Tiana's.
Was that late dining?
Yeah, we always do late dining. We typically eat late here anyway, just give everyone an opportunity to get home from work. My boys usually have late martial arts classes, and so it just works best for us to eat late. And again, they're, teenagers plus at this point. So it just works better without having little kids around.
Did you get up to anything else this day?
No, that was kind of it. It's all that stuff takes a lot longer than you think it does. I mean, the other thing we did is that since I have a 21-year-old, DJ and I have a tradition when we get on our cruise ships, we always go to, I think it's Frozone's or whatever. It's right next to the soft serve station where they have some of the smoothies and things that you can get, but they have not the real Dole Whips, but it is a pineapple slushy type of a drink. And he wanted his with rum. So for the first time, we got his mixed with rum. And so I got that as well. And the guy that was working there overmade it. So we essentially got 3 for the price of 2. I made sure I tipped him well. And for the rest of the cruise, whenever we went and got those, we got one almost every single day. He gave us that same 3 for the price of 2 deal. And but that was just that's our tradition. And now it's kicked up for the adult version of the Dole Whip.
Well, you wake up the next day. What was this day for you and your family?
So day 2 was our sea day. And I got to tell you, this was the foggiest cruise I have ever been on. And every day had fog rolling in and out. Woke up to fog. You would get a clear period in the afternoon and then more fog. And then around sunset, it was just waves and waves of waves. It's kind of cool because you would see it coming and you just sail right into it. And then all of a sudden you'd sail right up and you could look back and see the fog behind you and stuff. But that did mean the foghorn was going quite a bit throughout the day. But this was I love sea days on the Disney Cruise Line. And I think it's one of the values that you get out of sailing with Disney is that everything that they make available for you to do on the sea day. So yeah, we started with breakfast at Cabanas and went and got coffee at the Cove and, filled our day up with trivias and that type of thing.
Did you win?
No, we did movie quotes trivia, TV quotes trivia, sidekick trivia. Usually did a whole lot better than we thought we were. I think we always finished in the top 3, but didn't win any this time. And there was a Star Wars trivia, and that's my thing, and I didn't make it to that. But I typically avoid those because I really don't have anything to prove when it comes to it. But yeah, it was those are among our favorite things to do. The other thing that was that day is that DJ and I went and did the stem to stern wine tasting. Again, this is his first opportunity to do these type of things since he was 21 years old. And that was fun. I mean, I normally go do those things with my wife, but Beth and Alec went and got massages because he's 18. I mean, he's done them in the past, but didn't have to sign any waivers or anything like that. So while we were drinking, they were getting spa treatments and the like, and really enjoyed that. Going to a tasting with my son was just a different experience because he's not a real big drinker, but he does like learning about it. And, when you do those things, they give you so much history and tell you so much about what you're drinking, where it comes from, how you can tell all that type of stuff. And he ate that up. I don't know how much of it he remembers, but we were playing that game for the rest of the cruise because we got the wine package for our dinners. And so we'd order a bottle and then we'd just go through the whole thing. It's like, is this New World or is it Old World? Is it clear? Can you see your fingers? Does it have legs? All the little processes that they teach you during the tasting. And so, yeah, I was really, really pleased with that and can't wait to do that again on a future cruise at some point.
I love it. Speaking of the wine package, did you feel like you got value out of that?
Yeah, I did. It was a 4-night cruise. And what we did is we ordered the 5-bottle, basically classic package because I prefer reds. My wife prefers whites. And so, I ordered a red the first night. She ordered, and she and DJ ordered a bottle of white. And then I didn't finish the bottle. So they just brought it to dinner the next night. And, you save a little bit per bottle on that. And it was something that I had paid for in advance. So it was just one more thing that was not showing up on the bill at the end of the cruise. And yeah, so it's something that I can't remember how many cruises ago we started getting that. And we've just found it to be convenient by comparison as opposed to, picking out a bottle every single night and then paying it by the bottle.
Awesome. Did you have a show this evening?
We did, but we didn't go to it. Over the course of the cruise, we ended up, because we've been on the Wonder 4 times, so we've seen all the shows so many times. And I basically told them, I was like, I'd like to go to one. And we just didn't want to spend all of our time on a 4-night cruise in the theater. And so we ended up going to see Frozone, whichever night that was, which was not that night. And we ended up spending that time again in down in the French Quarter, listening to the Starlight Serenade. And again, like I said, we did some laps around deck 4. And then, yeah, I mean, it was just that was the other thing about this. And I don't mean to keep harping on it, but again, it was just this notion that here we are at this stage of our lives with everyone getting ready to go their own separate ways and being able to sit down and just talk and enjoy things as adults, all 4 of us, just brought a completely different vibe to this cruise compared to any of those that we had done before, even the one we just did 2 years ago when they were, 19 and 16. It just felt that much different on a day-to-day basis. And so we didn't have to worry about filling every minute of every day up with as many activities, and we could just enjoy sitting in a lounge, enjoying a drink and taking in some entertainment. And that worked out well for us.
Goals, Dennis, goals. I can't wait. I mean, I can wait because I want my baby to stay little, but also that's exciting for when it does happen. And the French Quarter is such a great bar. For the listeners, you just have to go there. It's like right on your way to Tiana's, and it's just such a great bar. So the live music, it's laid out really well. It's not like teeny tiny. I feel like I think the Wish Class Bayou is great, or that bar in general, but it's so small. And this bar is just, it has space. And the staff is always so fantastic there as well. And that's not to say that they aren't great in all of the lounges that are on the ship, but I think it has something to do with where that one is located on deck 3 between the atrium and Tiana's. It's a high traffic area. You get a lot of people that are stopping in. They do a lot of trivias there. They do a lot of the how to draw classes and that type of thing there as well. They get all kinds. The
we got to know a server there by the name of Ronald, who was really, really fantastic. He would come up to us every single time. We took pictures with him at the end of the cruise. They could not be more friendly. I still remember Lana from the last 2 cruises I did on the Wonder that was there, and she was fantastic. That's the lounge that always stands out to me across the fleet.
I agree.
Love it. I have not been on the Wonder since it was that lounge. I still remember the good old promenade days.
Got to get back on.
Let's go ahead and move into this night's dinner.
Yeah, so dinner was at Triton's. It's one of my favorites, as good as Tiana's is. I really enjoy, and Chris, you're not going to like this, but the escargot appetizer.
You're allowed to like the seafood items.
But I always double up on the appetizers with the fried brie and the escargot. And yeah.
You at least get the fried brie.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, it was a great dinner. I had the lamb that night. I can't remember what everyone else had, but everyone was pleased with their meals. And I requested a central table for our dining. And so we were right there in the middle of the restaurant. And not that there's any entertainment going on in Triton's or anything like that, but it's great for people watching. You can see everything that's going on around you, and you kind of got an idea what's happening at all the tables. You can hear all the celebrations that are happening anywhere in the restaurant. And so yeah. So to the extent that you want to make a request, I always suggest getting that central location.
Did you have anybody else at your table?
No, it was just the 4 of us.
Did you get up to anything else this evening?
Match Your Mate. That was fun. My wife and I went and watched it. DJ and Alec came with us. Alec was suffering from secondhand embarrassment for the contestants. So he got up about 10 minutes into it and left. Got more popcorn. I think we caught up with him afterwards. I don't know what he went off and did. But again, it was, DJ couldn't believe that they were doing that on the ship. And so, they are, my boys are slightly introverted. And so the thought of getting up on, in front of a whole room of people and admitting to those type of things is just, astonishing to them. So, but DJ did get a good kick out of that when it was all said and done.
Love it. Well, we move into your next day, and this will be your first port stop, Catalina Island.
That's correct. Went to Catalina Island. This is one of my favorite ports in all of North America. And to be clear, Alaska's got the best set of ports because of what you can do from them. But if you're going to just hang out in a port during the day, for my money, Catalina is the best one. It is got plenty of places to eat, plenty of places to shop, plenty of things to learn about, to look at. You got a great view of the ship, because you have to tender into the port from there. And I've always wanted more time when we've it's been two cruises, but both times we've been there, I've wanted more time in that port than what I've had available to me. But I cannot recommend it enough. If you're going to sail out of San Diego, make sure Catalina Island is on your itinerary. It is very, very much worth it.
So what did you do?
So we did a private excursion, and it was called the Interior Adventure. I booked it with Catalina Island Adventures, and the whole point of this was to see the bison that were on the island. The reason why I booked a private excursion is because it was less than half the cost of the similar excursion that you would book through DCL. Wow. And yeah, Disney wanted $174 a person, and I found this for $84 per person. And it was so easy to get to. We got off the tender, we took a left, walked down the pier, and there they were. And we were way ahead of time, so we had an opportunity to go explore some. But when it was time, they loaded us up in a truck. We drove into the interior of the island, and the backstory is that sometime back in the early 1900s, a whole herd of bison were brought to this island to shoot a Western. They no sooner got to the island and they ran off, and then they overpopulated. And at one point, I think there was 400 of them on the island, and then they've rounded them up. They've shipped some of them off to Yellowstone and other places, and they got about 75 that are currently on this island. And so you're not guaranteed to see them is the thing. And that's kind of the reason I didn't want to pay $174 a person. So we found this alternative. We saw 3 over the course of the excursion, 3 males. The females apparently herd altogether. We didn't run into them. But the other thing, the exotic wildlife you're going to find on this island is the dwarf foxes and the giant squirrels. And the dwarf foxes are about 3/4 the size of a normal fox, and the giant squirrels are about 1.5 times the size of a normal squirrel, and they're mainly on the ground. I saw one of the dwarf foxes, which was pretty cool. My kids saw one of the giant squirrels. There's a conservation station store on the island, and it has little statues of life-size statues of what these things are. Think of a squirrel that is really, really buff, and that is what the giant squirrel looks like. It looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger as a squirrel. And the foxes are just really cute, small-looking foxes. But that excursion's fun. You drive for about an hour up into this airstrip, which they call like the Mile High Airport or airport. I can't remember, Airport in the Sky or something like that. It's at the top of one of the hills. And we wandered around there for a little bit as a bathroom break. And then we got back onto the truck and then drove back into town. And it was definitely worth it. The previous time that I was in Catalina, we did zip lining, which I think I enjoyed just a little bit more, simply because those trucks are awfully bouncy. You're not on paved roads, you're on dirt roads and rocky roads and things like that over the time. But my wife is currently working on a master's degree, and she ended up using pictures and information we gained from that tour for one of her projects, as well as some books that she picked up from that conservation station. So it worked out really, really well for us, and we really enjoyed it. The only thing is after that, I had planned on renting a golf cart to drive around the island, but none of us could stomach the thought about getting into another vehicle for an hour after having bounced around in that truck for a while.
Still sounds like a pretty cool excursion.
Yeah, it is. It is. And if you're going to do it, I would definitely check out what you can get as an independent version of that, because I was happy with that $84 per person. I would not have said it was worth $174 per person.
And then at that port, like where you walk down the pier, are there restaurants and things right there that you could stop at?
Oh yeah. Right across the street, you start running into things. There's the golf cart rental place. There's one of two main ones. There's several restaurants. There's an ice cream shop, plenty of stores to shop at. You come around the port or the pier, and then there's another pier there that's got restaurants and things to eat that I didn't even get a chance to explore. Not too long a walk, and they call it the casino. It's not a gambling casino. It's a meeting hall that's really famous on the island that you can explore. There's so much to do. And we did the golf cart the last time we were there 3 years ago, and really loved it for the views that we could get from driving around the island. And I really hope to do it again. But like I said, it's just the idea of getting back in another vehicle for an hour after having been in that truck for two just was not appealing at the time. But yeah, I've always left that island feeling like I had more to explore. And so I would not be adverse to going back to San Diego to go to Catalina Island again.
Well, sounds like a lovely day on Catalina. You get back on the ship, and where do you head next?
So we basically went back up to Deck 9 and hit up the Cove Cafe, and I grabbed a drink from Signals, and we sat in those comfy chairs that they have outside of the Cove and killed some time for a couple hours. And we had some Wi-Fi. The boys wanted to check up on some things, check in with some friends and things like that. So we did that. And then, it wasn't too long after that we headed back to the French Quarter. It was the Starlight Serenade was heading there, and we ended up killing time until dinner there. But that was a pretty quiet. I stand corrected. We had Frozone was that night. So after lounging for a bit outside Cove Cafe, we went down to the theater to take in Frozone, and we picked that show because as much as we like the variety type shows, I can't remember which one is on the Wonder, but the adults playing children thing like really bugs my boys. So it's like Believe or Dreams. I can't remember which one it is. And so we skipped that, and we chose for, the Broadway performance of Frozone in its place.
Did everybody like it?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's again, the fourth time that we've seen it, and it's a familiar story, and it takes an hour, and it's enjoyable. They always do great performances on that.
And where did you head for dinner this night?
Dinner was back at Triton's. It was pirate night this time, so we had the pirate menu, and I don't know, I'm not as down on it as most people. That it's a seafood intensive meal, and so I had the crab cake. I gotta say, I really like the carrot soup with the banana bread croutons. That works for me. I don't know why, but it does. And then I got the pasta with the shrimp and scallops. I'm a big scallop guy. So I really enjoyed that meal. And then, after that, it was time for the pirate party and the fireworks. So that was our evening in a nutshell. I mean, that was a busy evening between Frozone dining and then going to the pirate party. And it's hard to beat that evening on a cruise.
I did the pirate menu on my last sailing and was actually pleasantly surprised because it had been a long time since I had had that menu.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not as down on it as I know a lot of people are. And I suppose if you are doing a lot of cruises in a year, then it can get tiresome. But for us, this is the only cruise we've had for 2 years. And so it worked for us. And, maybe the bottle of wine at the table helped. I'm not sure.
I'm going to do Pirate Night in Europe this summer, so we'll see. I do think that lamb shank, right? That's one of the choices. Like, that sounds delicious. So I'll definitely try that.
That was probably the thing that made our meal, and it wasn't something I would have ordered. I asked the server, like, what's the best thing? And he's like, the lamb shank. I was like, bring it to me.
Yeah, you always got to trust those recommendations because the servers know what gets eaten and what gets sent back.
Well, you have one more full day on the ship, and this is your Ensenada day. What did you get up to on this day?
Okay, so this was the plan. Originally, when we were thinking to head to Ensenada, back 3 years ago, we did a winery tour, and they had two versions of it. They had adults only, and then they had a version that you could take your kids with you. And I really wanted to do that again because it was one of my favorite Disney excursions of all time. You get to go to LHL, and I can't remember what the other winery is. It was a great value. You get the amount of wine you get. The wineries were beautiful. One of them serves you food. The only problem was this time around, they were only doing the adult version. Everyone had to be 21 and up, even though the drinking age in Mexico is 18. And since we did have an 18-year-old, we were not going to leave anybody behind. That was not the point of this cruise. I looked into private excursions and just could not find anything that was doing it for us that was going to replicate that experience where I was comfortable on my own going through the city to find the people and risking the getting back in time for the cruise departure. So we made this plan. Ensenada bills itself as the birthplace of the margarita and fish tacos. And we learned that on our previous cruise out of San Diego. And so we decided that we were going to get off the ship. We were going to find some place to get both. It did not go nearly as well as I hoped. And here's, I think, what the problem was. We slept in that morning. We did go to Cabanas and they had Mickey Churro waffles, which were fantastic. Enjoyed all of that. And then we went down to the French Quarter again, killed some time, had coffee, got some beignets. And around 10:45, we decided, let's go ahead and get off the ship and we'll start exploring. Don't do that because we got down to the boardwalk and we were the only tourists there. And so that meant everyone that had a restaurant, everyone that had a store was approaching us, trying to get us to come in, and they were not taking no for an answer. And they had no one else to divert their attention to. And so after we were not ready for margaritas and fish tacos at 10:45. And so, but the whole point is we're going to explore. So we went down the boardwalk, we went through the black market, and we went into downtown a little bit. But after about 30, 45 minutes, I told my wife, I was like, I can't take this anymore. I just cannot keep saying no to everybody. So we started walking back to the ship. There was a restaurant that we had scoped out that we thought we would try. And so we got back and we told the guy that we were ready to eat. So he sat us. So it's about 11:30. He sat us outside, which at the time did not really strike me as an issue until 5 different sets of mariachi duos showed up wanting us to pay them to play music. 3 different sets of panhandlers set up wanting money and the other thing like this. So I think this would have been a better plan if we got off the ship at, say, 2 in the afternoon, because people would be getting back from their excursions. Other people would be getting off the ship after having spent the morning doing stuff. We would not have been the only people wandering around. We would have had that experience diluted a little bit. On top of that, the advice I'm going to give people is if you're going to any of these restaurants in Ensenada, make sure there's a price for every single thing that's on the menu. The menu that we saw, everything was listed in pesos. And I pulled out my phone and I did the calculation for these tacos and how much it was going to cost. Between the 6 tacos we ordered and a cheeseburger, it should have come to about $20, $25. I ordered a margarita. My wife and DJ ordered margaritas and Alec had water. We were presented with a $90 bill when it came down to it. And then it occurred to me, it's like there was no price for the margaritas on that menu. And so they could kind of charge whatever they wanted. And what are you going to do when you're in a foreign country? It didn't go off as planned, but I think it could work. Like I said, just go out in the afternoon when there's going to be more people around, be a little bit more particular with where you're going to be going to, sit inside so you're not being hit up by so many people that want your other services. I get it. It's like going to Nassau and these other places, they need you, get you in their stores. And so they're going to try. But when you're the only ones there, they will follow you down the street to try and get your attention and get you in. And they just don't want to take no for an answer. So, that being said, we ate and we were back on the ship by 12:30 or so. And we enjoyed the rest of our day on the Wonder, but that could have gone off a little bit better. So again, get an excursion or just wait until later in the afternoon to go out.
And definitely ask what the pricing is, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, and that was the other thing is like, if there was any tequila in those margaritas, it was like a thimbleful. It was just not a value. And look, I don't want to trash the place too much because I don't know that I would have had too much better experience at a lot of these places. A lot of them are seating outside or whatever, but could have spoke up, I suppose, on my own end. But it just is like I said, last time I was in Ensenada, I had such a fantastic experience on that excursion through Disney. And this just didn't live up to that, but that's okay. We still had a great day.
Did you go to the port excursion desk and leave any feedback about the option of that excursion?
Oh, no, I didn't. I wish I had, now that you mention it. When in 2023, I did. I made sure I stopped by and told them about how fantastic it was because it was one of my favorite book through Disney excursions ever because it was just you ended up at LHL, they let you sample 4 glasses of wine and they send you home with half a bottle of wine. And then you go to Madame Guadal something or other, and then you end up getting to try 3 different types of wine there and they serve you food while you're at it. And they're beautiful places. I took dozens and dozens of pictures of each. And but no, that's a good point. Like I should have stopped by that desk and mentioned something to him about it because we would have signed up for that in a heartbeat.
Well, you get back on the ship. What did you get up to on your final evening aboard the Wonder?
So we did another round of Dole Whips, did some trivia, more time in the French Quarter. You'll probably sensing a theme with all these things that I'm talking about here. The Starlight Serenade was there. We ended up getting to talk to them for about 20 minutes at the end of one of their sets. And that was right after the Disney Believe got announced. And I wish I could remember what their names was, but the wife, huge Disney fan. Their whole story was that they did their first contract on the Disney Magic on their right after their honeymoon. And now they were on the Wonder, and she was so stoked for the Believe. And we just talked about for like 20 minutes what we thought might be on the Believe and what that experience. It was so much fun talking to them. And then, I talked about the fog. We walked around deck 4 for a while, and that was one of those evenings where we're in the fog, and all of a sudden we just sailed right out of the fog. And it was just like this surreal moment where you couldn't see anything, and then you got the gorgeous sunset that you get on a cruise line. And we did some shopping. That was also fun. I am a big collector of coffee mugs. That is my favorite souvenir. I bring one home from nearly every single cruise we were on. This time around, I was just not finding a mug that would do it for me. However, earlier in the cruise, and I wish I had brought it with me so I could show you two, even though people listening to this podcast wouldn't be able to see it. There's this white mug, and it's not like a pure white. And DJ and I were always joking around. He was always he was always picking up mugs like, Dad, have you considered this one? And he kept coming back to this white mug. And I was like, joking around with him. I was like, well, is that bone white? Is it ivory white? What is it? What is the color is white? And so I decided I wasn't going to get it. But that last night, while we were down in the French Quarter listening to the Starlight Serenade, he excused himself to go to the bathroom. And after about 25 minutes, I looked to my wife and I said, do we need to go find him? Because he's been gone a long time. Well, he had snuck off and gone to the store to get that mug. Mm-hmm. And then after we got back from the cruise, before he went back to college that morning, that next morning, I was making coffee. He walked up and said, fill her up, and put that mug down in front of me. So that's the first time he'd done anything like that. It's now one of my favorite mugs just because of the memories that are attached to it and that whole experience and the inside joke that it became. And so anytime he's over, I make sure that I've got that mug out so that one of the two of us is drinking out of it. But yeah, it's just that's one of the differences with sailing with adult children is that they, it's fun when you're there with them, and they are, because I can think of like that first cruise we did in 2017 when they were 13 and 9, and the things they got excited about, and it's it's just different now. And getting to share the Cove Cafe, getting to share time in the lounges, and the French Quarter is open to anybody, but getting to go back to the Cadillac Lounge, getting to go to the Crown and Fin and spend time there. And, he's got his own money because he's been working, and, he does things like that coffee mug.
Oh, I love that.
I love everything about the passion that Dennis has brought about this sailing, to be honest.
100%. I was getting ready to come out to record this. We'll come over to the computer, and Dave's like, good luck. I'm like, we don't need luck. Dennis is coming on. He's amazing. So he's such a good guest. So are we at the end of your night? Is that the end of your cruise night?
We had dinner in Animator's Palette. I love going to Animator's Palette. It's, if for no other reason, because they, on those longer cruises, you get to do the whole art thing where you draw your character and stuff like that. But on the shorter ones, they do that animation special where they draw all the characters. And
I love that.
Yeah. And even after all these years, and no matter how many times we've seen it, because we've now been on the Wonder 4 times, we've been on the Magic twice, and just guessing what they're drawing. And then later when they do that same picture, but then they add the other elements like the color, and then they add the animation to it and stuff like that. And then the big show. And I got to tell you, the sitting right there in the middle of the restaurant when Sorcerer Mickey came around, I pulled out my camera just at the best time, got this great video of him dancing down the aisle. And I actually found by accident a night or two before where it is he comes from the ship. It's on that promenade deck. And we were just walking deck 4. As we came around the corner, he and his handler were standing outside, and I was like, oh, hey, Mickey. And and the handler's like, he can't take pictures. I was like, that's okay. Knock him dead. We did Knuckles with Mickey, and he waved and got all excited to see us. So I always enjoy animators. They also had the black truffle presets, which is another one of my favorite items on the ship. I find that a lot of the appetizer stuff is some of the best food they have over the course of the cruise. So a lot of the entrees can be good, but I always feel like the appetizers are consistently so.
I feel like appetizers do get all the hype on DCL. Not that there's bad entrees, but there's some really good appetizers.
Definitely.
Well, sadly, this brings us to the end of your cruise. Your next day is disembarkation. How was that process for you and your family?
It was really, really easy. My number one concern was getting the boys up, but because, when you got teenagers or that early 20s, they can sleep. But, went over there at, 7:00, knocked on the door, got them up. We got down for the breakfast, took our time, and then we just sat there on deck 4 and watched everybody else get off the ship because we didn't really have anywhere we had to be anytime soon. And once the crowd thinned out, we just wandered down and, spent maybe 5 minutes in line getting off the cruise. And, as they had that really convenient face scanning technology that made it easy to get off as opposed to having to pull out your passports and go through all of that. And then it was back across the street, dropping off our luggage with the Wyndham so that we could explore San Diego for the day.
And did you get up to anything exciting in San Diego that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, we went to the Midway Museum. So that's that aircraft carrier from World War II that's there. Okay, so this is not going to mean a whole lot to everybody else, but I am a graduate of the University of Missouri. And their arch rival, the Kansas Jayhawks, just happened to be playing their opening NCAA tournament game in San Diego that day, which I did not realize at the time. And so there I was wearing my Missouri alumni t-shirt as we're exploring the Midway, and I kept running into all these Jayhawk fans. It's like, this is a nightmare. What in the world is going on? But it ended up being some good-natured ribbing and trash talking back and forth. And they are bitter rivals. If you're not from Missouri and Kansas, you just don't know. But at any rate, so ended up when you end on the island and the command deck of the aircraft carrier, they bring in smaller groups of about 20 people because it can get fairly cramped. And so I was in there with a few Jayhawk fans. And so we got to talk some basketball trash, and fortunately they got the better of it because their team won, mine did not. And then the other funny joke from touring the Midway is you get down to the low deck, there's a command center room where they plan out all the operations for their planes. And on this day, it was a big field trip day for all the schools in San Diego. And so all these kids were at the different command centers, and all of a sudden one girl runs up to someone else and says, "Oh no, we just lost Billy Bob." And so, the legendary pilot Billy Bob has become another inside joke. It's funnier for us just because of the way she delivered it. And so, every once in a while, it's But what about Billy Bob? Comes up around here. But you got to go see the Midway if you're in San Diego. If you're interested at all, if you've seen Top Gun, if you've enjoyed anything about World War II, if you've been to Hawaii and seen what's happened there, the Midway is worth the 2 to 4 hours of your time to explore it.
Amazing. Well, did you have any other notable cast interactions you wanted to highlight from this sailing?
Yeah, I mean, the big one was Ronald in the French Quarter. He was fantastic. Like I said, we were posing for pictures with him at the end of it. You know, he always came out and talked to us about our day every single time. Our room attendant was a ninja. We met him on the first day, and we'd be gone for 2 minutes, and everything would be made up. And anything that we requested, he took care of in the background, and without us even noticing him. And our servers were equally fantastic, as they always are on Disney Cruise Line. I mean, even when you get an average set of servers, they're amazing and take good care of you. And Julio and Alan were no exception this time around.
Love it. Was there anything else that your kids got up to, like, by themselves?
That was my question too.
Well, they would go off and sleep sometimes. My wife and I did have some of our own time because it was funny. The previous time we did this cruise, it was myself, my wife, and Alec. He got all the attention. And like by day 2, it was like, because the days were reversed on that cruise. And so we ended up, I think, in Ensenada first. And that afternoon, my wife and I wanted to explore Ensenada a little bit. He's like, I'm going back to the ship. You guys have been great. But he was tired of our attention. But they'll go explore. DJ had fallen asleep on that sea day while we were down in the French Quarter Lounge. And maybe we went to see a movie. I can't remember. But there was a medical emergency. And so they sailed into Ensenada to get the passenger off. And he got these incredible pictures on his phone of Ensenada through the fog. And so he did that. They like exploring. They like finding all the nooks and crannies on the ship and the likes of that. They are not, of course, there was no clubs for DJ. Alec has never been interested in, he aged out of the clubs, but the only one he was ever interested in was the Oceaneers on our very first cruise. But they like hanging out with us or getting food and just enjoying the amenities of the ship. But they don't get up to a whole lot unique, specific, there. They'll just, catch up to them. I was like, what do you want to? Oh, just wander around. Is what ends up being.
Have they ever expressed an interest on trying any other cruise lines?
I'm glad you asked that, because that's one of the things that I was thinking about after this cruise. We took advantage of a lot less of the Disney specific amenities this time around. And so I don't have a good answer to this yet, but I have been contemplating possibly looking into a different cruise line if it's an itinerary we want to do. I wouldn't necessarily just do it because we want to go to the Bahamas or we want to go to the Caribbean, but if it's another area of the world, like going back to the Mediterranean or Europe or Australia, Japan, or something like that, would consider an alternative just because we didn't need as much of the Disney. That being said, I'm about as big a Disney fan as they come. And I pay the extra price so that I have the Disney music in the halls, that I get to see even if I'm not going to go up and meet them, but just seeing Mickey and Donald and Thor and Spider-Man and all the other characters around the ship is worth it to me. I really enjoy that. It reminds me of being a kid and going to the parks. And I have all these fond memories of taking my kids to the parks and these other cruises. And so I'll always pay for that extra. But it's kind of opened my eyes up to the opportunity of trying other cruise lines if it's someplace we want to go that Disney just doesn't have as big a presence in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you just have to decide, are you and your wife and the boys going to do any other ship amenities, or are ship amenities not important to you? Do you need a rock climbing wall? Do you need ice skating? If you're not going to do that, then it opens up a different set of cruise lines that are more, you can go and listen to music and have a vibe right somewhere. So yeah, that opens up a different class or a different set of ships. So interesting. It's interesting as we grow.
Yeah.
And age.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, Dennis, sounds like such a lovely sailing and maybe a last family hurrah. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience on the Wonder.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me back. I can't believe it's been as long as it has since I've got an opportunity to talk to you all. And so it's been a great thrill to come back and talk some more Disney cruising.
Well, we appreciate you coming back on. If our listeners want to hear more from you, where can they find you?
So I have a Star Wars podcast called Podcast Stardust. It is out 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We do a weekly news show. We are covering whatever is the current Disney Plus release. We're getting ready to do a whole lot of Mandalorian and Grogu coverage here at the end of the month. And then usually Wednesdays are just a topical type of discussion about something about Star Wars. And so we are breaking down The Force Awakens this year in 10-minute segments each month as we're covering its 10th anniversary. So yeah, you can find us on any podcatcher that's out there.
Yeah, you guys do some really cool deep dives on some of these episodes and movies. So definitely worth checking out for our Star Wars fans out there.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for coming on, Dennis. Christy, where can our listeners follow you?
You can find me at Pack Your Pixie Dust on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube now. And if you would like to work with me to help you plan your next vacation, you can find a contact me link in the show notes that Lake has set up. Lake, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram and YouTube at MouseGen, and you can always follow the podcast at DCL Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. And you can find more information at our website, dclpodcast.com. But that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next time on the DCL Podcast. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show. Once again, we want to thank Dennis for coming on and sharing his family's experience on the Disney Wonder. If you're enjoying the show, we greatly appreciate you leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'd also like to thank our Patreons who help make this show happen each and every week for us. You too can help support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/DCL Podcast. Whether you're boarding a cruise, enjoying a trip to the parks, or adventuring outside of Disney, on behalf of myself, Christy, and Steve, we want to wish you smooth sailing and safe travels. And we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.